Well, we are in day number 2 of ownership on this HPV 4255 spreader, which stands for Hydra Push Vertical, meaning it has vertical beaters on it. Well, just like everything else we get, we usually have to disassemble it and assemble it the right way. Now, when we were following Andrew down the road with this here yesterday, I don't know who noticed it first, whether it was you guys behind the camera here, or if it was Jared, or if it was me. You notice these wheels were leaning a little bit. So I got a hold of the salesman. I said, I don't know if them axles are supposed to be flipped over, one side flipped with the other, what have you. So he got a hold of the rep, and the rep said, if, you know, make sure left is left, right is right. We did that. But we got looking through some brochure pictures, and we seen where this spindle, or the center hub, in the pictures we seen was level with about the bottom of the spreader. So that meant that the walking beams were upside down. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna lift the spreader up, we're gonna pull the wheels, and we're just gonna roll the walking beam over. And by doing that, what they have is they have the spindle tube. The tube in the walking beam for the spindle is welded in on a little bit of an angle. And the reason why they want that is they want this actually angled the other way so that the tire sits actually like this. And then when you load it, it'll push down on that spindle and it'll actually take it to being more or less straight. You can kind of see it. I'm not sure if you could see it in the camera or not, but it almost looks like a old tired spreader that's 20 years old that has just been taken advantage of all its life. You could see it tipping. You could see where Jared pulled in the shop here, the outside tread is not touching. You could see the wet mark on the floor, and then you could see how the tire is clean on the inner 3 ribs, but it's dirty on the outer rib. So that goes for both sides. We need to flip both sides over. So we're gonna do that quickly here, and then we're gonna roll this out the door.
This side looks even worse. You can really see it in that mark.
Yeah, you can see, yeah, Jared's right. You can see the track it's left on the floor. Only 3/4 of the tire left a mark, wet mark on the concrete. So it's too wet to spread any manure today, so we'll go ahead and get this switched out. But other than that, it seems to be a pretty good spreader. Andrew did 4 loads with it yesterday. Well, the field is just up here to our left. One thing that we are noticing, I don't know if you can pick it up in the camera here, it seems like the wheels on both sides are tipped. You can really see it on this left side. Alright, so we have lifted it up with the telehandler. And then the thought is just to take one tire off. When we get the one tire off, we might be able to roll that walking beam right over with the other tire on there. We might have to lift it up a little more, but we had a numbskull one time raking hay with a single rotary rake, and that had a walking beam on it, kind of like this here. And he went across the field, ended up going into a gopher hole, and he ended up flipping the whole walking beam over on the rake. And kind of a real dummy. He was a moron. He was a real moron. So I don't know if you could get this spreader going fast enough, but it looks like this tailgate arm is slightly in the way of the tire coming all the way around.
Yeah, that would stop it.
Yeah. Alright, now, do we have it up high enough? We don't have it up high enough. Alright, so, you know, we could put the chain right there, and then set it down and pry it back to the top. Pin is starting to watch it now. You gotta watch it when it's sliding off. Down. Keep going. Whoa. Up just a little. Keep going. Right there. Well, we just got to nut this wheel here, and then we could do the same thing to the other side. Boy, that's really bringing the side height down. We were at 7 foot before we flipped this over, so the little skid steers that we have are going to have a better time of loading this. So
Almost didn't buy it because it's too high.
yeah, it was questionable. It was questionable whether or not we were going to be satisfied with it being as high as it was. See, that other spreader, the side height is about here, and this one's got about the same length hub on it. It's just taller. So we'll do the same thing to the other side, and we're gonna have to check our drawbar height here, but I think we're gonna be set there. So we're gonna have to re-torque that wheel now. I don't know how this got monkeyed up. I don't know if maybe when these spreaders were delivered, if maybe they have this walking beam sitting the other way so that it'll set better on the trailer. If you look, there's quite a bit of a nub there, so that would probably make sense. It was probably something in the directions, you know, hey, before you put the tires on, roll the walking beam over. I don't know how this was delivered to Kaz, but oh well. Well, we'll do the same thing to the other side, right, Bubs?
Yeah. You just leave it like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would take the front one off. It's lighter, has less tread on it.
Hey Tim, I got a job for you. We got some job for you. What's that for? You can run out the FWS. Get an 1.25 pipe pad or pipe die.
Yeah. There's the handles on the bench. Take the handle with you and you get
Probably a lot for it. There's a rigid handle sitting right there, that orange. Not the electric, that orange. It's manual. Yeah.
I might have one at the house. Is there a quarter? Die? I got one of these at the house with the die set. I don't know if I have an inch and a quarter right now. I go up.
Need inch or a quarter, and if they have it, I get 2 of them. If they're not like certain days. Yeah, I gotta thread 4 pipes. Close there. I'll do that. Alright, where's that pipe? Tell them to go down.
Jared was putting the first stud on and he tightening the first one up, and he was tightening up the first lug nut, and he thought the rim was having trouble getting up over the lip, and this nut is like screwed up a little bit. If you could see, that hole is off center. Oh well. It spins on a little crooked like, but oh well. Well, we've got this job done. The one disadvantage of this spreader when I looked at it was a little taller than I wanted to see it. And the other advantage to this spreader was how high off the ground this back end was. It's still higher than the coon spreader. We drag the coon spreader on the ground sometimes, and this one here is all well protected. It's got a real nice skid plate underneath there. That's what I was actually lifting from when we flipped these axles over. And you can see the gearbox right in underneath there. Got a power shaft going to it. Now, I had explained in the video here yesterday when we first got this spreader going that you could lift off this back end. You could take the beaters right off of it. And they have their silage trucks set up like this too. You could put a beater assembly on their silage bodies to, you know, the guys that haul feed, they spread sometimes too with the same thing they haul feed with. So that makes for a real handy time, but that's what they do. Feed lots and whatever. The guys that are doing that, a little different than dairy. You really don't care about transferring disease back and forth. So with flipping these over, we did gain ourselves about 5 inches of, well, brought the side down 4 to 5 inches. And we got quite a camber on these axles here now. I mean, they're tipped in pretty good. So
24 hours, it'll be great.
yep. So the idea is once it gets a load on there, it'll sink itself down and them axles will be straight. So we'll get this out of the shop here. They're working on the diller tanker. They've got new air tanks they're putting on it. Swapping out a fan housing. They've got some pipe to put into it. And we've got to prime the inside. So you're probably wondering, what is the chopper still doing in the shop? Well, we had Kaz come over and do a inspection on it, and there was a few things that they brought to my attention that should be done, gonna need to be done, and will need to be done later on, if that makes any sense. So the panel, the transition panel underneath, we ordered one of those so that we have it for when we need it. It's not quite ready to be replaced, but they have a discount program right now, so we ordered everything that we're gonna need in the upcoming year. And I went through everything that I wanted with Rich here the other day. So let's get this spreader out of here and I'll show you what I'm working on at the present moment with this. There's only a couple more things I'm gonna do to it. And then we're going to bring in the 9320. We've got some issues with that. We're thinking it's brakes. We're hoping it's brakes, and we've got to start working on that project here after we roll this chopper out of the shop. Well, now we're going to do a couple of quick things to this chopper. Again, we did have it done, and I wanted to pull it out and get this next project started. Kaz come over and they did a pre-season checkup on it, and that pre-season checkup is a good idea to have done because John Deere knows about all these little spots that need to be looked at and that can be overlooked very easily. So he pulls out his computer, goes to the section where they have it listed for a chopper that's got this many hours on it, on different things to check. One of the items was the smooth roll, for example. And he said, you know, that smooth roll is getting wore down to the point where that's going to have to be replaced. Same thing with this top rear feed roll. That's getting down to the point where it needs to be replaced. Another thing we've got going on that we've got to keep an eye on is there's some cracks in the knife bed that's welded to the knife drum. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. I'm hoping I can get through this year with it Probably gonna have to put a new knife drum in it next year. So what we're working on now is the door that closes over the top of the knife drum, and that keeps that area closed when you're chopping crop. It opens for when you are going to sharpen the knives. Right now I've got that door out of there, and we did have a problem with this door getting popped open during corn silage, and we ended up filling this whole cavity up with corn silage because that door popped open a little bit. And what had happened was the roll pin that went down through this one side here broke, and the control rod that is hooked to the hydraulic cylinder, which is this rod right here, this sticks into the door like that, and the cylinder extends, it turns the rod, it opens the door up. Well, we had enough slop in the door that what we ended up doing was I ended up drilling out the hole in this control rod. There's a potentiometer on this other side that lets the chopper know that the door is opened or closed so that it can go through a knife sharpening process. So I've drilled those out, and we've got new holes drilled through the door itself. The only other option was to replace this door, which I did not want to do that. It had a 8mm roll pin in there. I drilled it out so that we can put a 10mm roll pin in, and we're going to double that roll pin up, and then that's going to allow that door to be shut down tightly and not let anything get up past it through the little gap, because it would come open just a little bit. We didn't really have any problem with it after I fixed the roll pin, but once it gets slop in there, it can start getting sloppier, and then you could run the risk of breaking it again. So we're going to get that done, and then we can roll this out. We'll bring the 9320 in and start working on the brakes on it. They're working on the diller spreader right now, putting air tanks on it, a fan housing, and they're going to put the wheels on it, and they've got some other stuff to do to the inside of the tank. So let's go ahead and get this door put in there, and we'll pound our roll pins in, and we'll see how tight it is. Alright, we have this door into place. I've got a roll pin right here, and then a roll pin on the other side, or spring pin, whatever you want to call that. It's we went from 8mm to 10mm, and then we've got a roll pin inside of the roll pin that's pounded into there. So what there is a hydraulic cylinder on this left side that opens and closes the door. So we'll go ahead and get it repinned, and then we can get this shroud back on there and get this thing rolled out the door so that we can get the 9320 in here. So now that we have this cylinder hooked up, I opened the door, closed it again, and now it's real tight. It doesn't move at all now. So that's done. At least we didn't have to buy a brand new door. I can't imagine how much that would be, probably $500 or $600. So we'll get this closed up, hook onto the head, and roll this out of here. Well, we're gonna roll this out the door. We do have to bring it back in at a later date here to do some more work to it. That bracket that goes on there for the blower motor I have not received yet, and that is quite involved. They're changing the whole geometry of the way that gets mounted around, and we have to do quite a bit of modifying to get that new bracket to work. I think they're more or less putting something on there that will go on, that goes on the 9000, the later 9000 series choppers. Apparently there was a few other choppers that had the same problem, is ours. In February of 2022 was when they came up with this new bracket design. That one green bracket that I welded, that gets taken out. Instead of the motor going in behind the blower, it goes on top of it or in front of it or below it or something, and it changes the whole thing around. So we need to modify that quite a bit, and we'll do that at a later date. So we'll go ahead and get the 9320 in here and start working on that. All right, now we are on to this project. This tractor's got 12,600 and some odd hours on it. And we're plugging transmission filters. We're assuming the brakes are bad. We bought this tractor used. A neighbor had it, neighbor just west of here, a few miles. This they used on their spreader. They spread manure, and then it spread manure for us, silage blade, what have you. We'll show you what the oil looks like here in the sight glass. Right there, it is black. So we're hoping that it's brake material. This tractor here is a little different than the R series articulators. The transmission and the differentials run in the same oil. The hydraulic system, however, has a separate system to it. There's a plastic reservoir right there up in front of the cab, and the hydraulic system, in other words, I don't know if the steering is part of that, I think it is. Steering and the hydraulics here on the back of the tractor are run off of that system, and then the transmission and the differentials run together. So we're going to roll in underneath the differentials. There's a plug that we're going to take out. We're going to see what that oil looks like, see what kind of material comes out of there when we pull the plug down. If we confirm that we do have brake material in those plugs, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the duals from all four corners just so I can make this project a little smaller. What has to be done to this tractor in order to do the brakes? You more or less have to, well, it doesn't look like we have to roll the rear axle out, but we've got to take everything off, because we've got to be able to split this right here, and yeah, it's in the way of that fender bracket there. So we'll go ahead and get to work here. Well, we have the duals removed on the front axle. On the rear axle, the duals have quite a bit of weight in them. We're going to remove the weight so that I can get in there and take all of the studs out that hold the dual on. It's just going to be a little easier getting them weights off so that we're not dealing with all of that, when we go to take the dual off, if you had an extended reach socket like that, you could get all them out of there, but then you're trying to put everything in together and it's kind of a mess. So we're going to take the weight off, then we'll take the dual off, do the same thing to the other side. All right, we have the duals removed from both sides. And the next thing we're gonna do, which we'll do it in the next video, is we're gonna pull the dual hubs off of the axles. Then we gotta decide which axle we're gonna start on first, whether it's the front one or the back one. And in order to get these final drives apart, this whole assembly has to be removed from the axle itself, and same thing up front. We've got to just about take the whole axle out of the front end. We're gonna have to get this wheel off of here, get the blade frames off, and then where the axle bolts down, or where the frame bolts down to the axle, the final drive is in there, and we have to drop the axle out in order to get the final drives apart on the front end. So that is gonna do it for this video. I want to thank you for watching, and we will catch you at the next one. It looks a little goofy with single tires on her, but yeah, take it easy. We'll catch you at the next one.